Like if I want that kind of role and I'm saying, okay, that I do want to work part-time, supporting a startup, for example, or supporting in a company like a corporate space, and I don't see these roles anywhere, how would I go about making that happen for me?
I think to some extent it's like any job, although I have never been like a pure career coach helping people get a job, I've always said, look, that, especially now with 500 applicants for jobs, all AI written resumes that are then also read by AI, etc., etc. That's sort of a game you can't win. And so relationships are so important to secure full-time roles, right? The ones that aren't advertised, it's even more so. It's, I'm working with this startup over here on their marketing. I now know they actually need someone who's going to work on, the HR side of things or the sales or whatever it is. I know people in my network. So often, it's tricky because it means you need to be on the inside of those networks, but that is what it's about. It's a relationships. And whether it's fractional or any kind of work now, the actual conversations with people with your network are what's going to get you your initial clients. But before that, I mean, it's really a lot of it's the marketing stuff, of course, your positioning and being super clear on the value you bring and your credibility and so on. And on the confidence side and pricing yourself and all these things, it's such a shift from full-time corporate where you get a salary regardless, and that's kind of just coming into your bank, to going, okay, this is now me selling myself. What's my worth? And how can I price myself? How can I translate my skills into language that makes sense for this new audience and so on? So there's obviously work around your positioning, around what exactly you're bringing in terms of value and offer, and who you want to work with. So is it, startups, for example, are notoriously messy, and they're in that kind of just got to make it work, hustle kind of, it's fun, it's exciting. Is that the kind of environment you want to be in, where probably you'll be wearing a gazillion different hats and so on? Or is it rather, let's say, I quite like the scale up audience personally, because they're doing super well, they're hiring lots of people, they're profitable, and that's a really nice place to come in. Then they have budget and they are ready for that next level of, okay, we've kind of been just, let's say, marketing, quite tactically. Now we want someone to come in to actually do the proper brand strategy or the marketing campaign and so on, right? So that's quite nice. But thinking, of course, the classic marketing things, who you're going to work with, what value, and how are you going to do that?
Yeah, that's right. I see women, particularly, well, women, anyone still that kind of step out of the corporate space, out of the fixed, this is my role and this is what I do, into, let's say, a freelance role, if we say it like a freelance role, and then coming up with an idea, how do I actually position myself? And I've seen that quite often. I've worked on like an interim recruiting side in the past 2 years as well, to see that often senior leaders, when they go out into that space, their resume shows like everything that they've basically done in the past. And that's a problem. That's a problem, I think, in particularly when you go as like fractional freelance, because you need to market yourself to a company in a certain way. Like, what is your recommendation for people like that? If I want to do that, do I need to address a specific problem? Do I need to pick a specific niche? How do I position myself?
So I think you can almost divide it into sort of the long-term intentional build and then the short-term pragmatic practical. In particular, again, if you're in that situation where maybe you've been made redundant or you've quit for various reasons, you need to get that money coming in right away. So now is not the time, unless you have a lot of savings or a very understanding partner who's very financially supportive, it's not the time to go, oh, what are my, wildest desires? And I'm now going to spend like a year exploring what success means. So a short-term pragmatic thing is finding, over the years, I've often had, there are associate roles, there are, whether it's interim roles, as you said, talking to recruiters and being a bit just scrappy about it, I suppose, not worrying too much about if it's the perfect fit, but at least just get something so that you're not just sitting at home worrying about it. Obviously with a caveat that you still need to have then the time and energy to build the thing you actually want to build. But realistically, those kinds of, partnering with existing experts. There are agencies now who have fractionals there, for example. Could you sign up with one of those? And it just means they do hopefully the business development and marketing and so on, and you just kind of show up and do the thing. So the sort of short term answer is do what you need to do to get something, I suppose. But then in terms of intentionally building it, it's much more thinking about exactly as you said. If you're LinkedIn and your CV, I haven't had a CV in so long, so mine would be terrible if I tried to create a CV now. I'd be scared of applying to a proper job. But really weaving a story and having that red thread. A danger I see, if I become a coach, it's easy to say, oh, I'm new as a coach, I'm completely new. But no, I've had 2 decades of professional experience. And then it's finding that I coached my team on this. I led those training, I facilitated. It's not a full chronological, these are all the things I've ever done. And in fact, for me, for example, my LinkedIn, I've actually kind of almost removed or at least deprioritized my initial marketing stuff because it's now so long ago and not directly relevant, even though it gives me kind of the corporate prestige and credibility. So it's really doing the work in terms of understanding what are you going to stand for, what's the value you bring, and as you said, the problem you solve. That's ultimately what a business does. And even if you're just a solopreneur, you are a business. You mentioned niching, it's such a challenge, right? Everyone's like, oh, but I don't want to limit myself. And a lot of us are multi-passionate and we've got so many ideas and things we want to do. I always say, look, you don't have to choose this forever, but at least for the next, I'd say 90 days, really, one type of client, one type of message, just stick with that. And then you can always add layers on. As I said, I do the B2C and B2B, that's fine, but I can't talk to both at the same time on the same channel. That just gets confusing, so you can have kind of, as one of my friends said, a carousel of projects over time. When you're first starting, I'd really recommend you probably can't go too specific. So I think most people don't go specific enough, right? So this is my value. My existing network is in banking, so even if I maybe want to move away from that over time, probably in the short term, going to those financial kind of companies is going to be the best bet because I've got the network, I've got the credibility, and that's kind of a hit the ground running solution. And then you can start shifting and applying for or networking with other more interesting areas if you want to. But in the short term, at least, again, it comes back to where do you have the network, the relationships and the credibility already.